Have you ever thought just how boring or ridiculous news commentary is today? Welcome to the RealJax podcast with Jim and Larry. The RealJax podcast. From crime and politics to entertainment, you can expect something different. Now, let's get real, Jax.
Hey everyone, welcome back to RealJax with Jim and Larry for episode 5. We've got special guests today. Sorry, I'm a little hoarse from the 4th of July holidays. How about you?
No, I was chasing a dog that got out. That's pretty much it.
Oh, well, that might be a whole nother episode.
Yeah, no doubt.
So we've got Mike Kaufmann today, local beaches guy. I've known him for
50 years?
Probably, but I'm only 40, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But
sorry, I forgot.
Mike's got an interesting story. He's quite an athlete, actually. I'll give kind of a basic bio on him. I went to high school with him. He's a little bit ahead of me, but he was basically a pro-level surfer, pro-level skater, and he's also one heck of a golfer and probably could have gone pro as a golfer if he didn't get sidetracked in his life by a couple of things, and he's going to tell us about that. But I've always thought he's an interesting guy. He's very likable. Everybody in town knows him. He's very humorous and quite a character and good entertainment to have around, and he's got a good story to tell. So without any more talking about our past,
We had these sponsors.
Larry's going to do sponsors, and then we're going to let Mike tell us about his last 40 years or so.
My son will like that. The skating stuff, my son will dig that. I got a lot of video of him skating. So hit our sponsors real quick. And, hey, we're going to get to the point. We're going to put up some ads. We were just talking about that earlier. Creating and building some ads to actually put in the audio and video, 15-second spots. So y'all be seeing that. I'm looking forward to that because it'll have some production quality to it instead of me just talking on the mic about it. First sponsor, obviously, Extreme Wings, my new employer. They got 4 locations: 6337 Roosevelt Boulevard, 12220 Atlantic Boulevard, 11565 North Main Street, and 160 Shops Boulevard. That's in St. Johns County. Tremendous Barbecue, been open since 2007. It's 8927 Hurlong Road. Remember, everything's fresh, everything's homemade. Good friend of mine, a big supporter of first responders, and he takes care of us every September. Advanced Window Tinting, my buddy Ricky Tillman. 5024 Sunbeam Road. He's a platinum 3M dealer, the highest level of 3M dealer around. And, of course, your business, Secure One.
Secure One Protection Services. We do burglar and fire alarm systems, cameras, 24-hour monitoring, access control. I can't believe I have to pause to think about this sometime. What we do is we've been doing it for 35 years, since 1986, but Secure One is your number one choice for protection in Jacksonville or Northeast Florida.
Very good. And we've got Mike Kaufmann, and we've been talking, me and Jim's been talking about you for a bit, and the stories you're building up, and we've obviously had we're going to have a wide variety of guests on, everything from crime and politics and entertainment, and notable figures around Jacksonville, people with checkered past. I think it's important, especially stories of redemption, like our buddy Doug Dixon, that episode with him. It's done well. And then the story about you, the skating stuff is really interesting, and having that background. I mean, I skated as a kid at Kona. My cousin did he did some competition stuff, and my son, he's constantly skating. I mean, he's actually really good. So
my son was a big skater. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So hearing that. So yeah, I'd like to hear where you've been in your life.
Hang on.
The roads traveled.
Speaking of Doug Dixon, that is our next upcoming show.
It is.
That will be aired before you see Mike. So
yeah, we got Mike Talbert next, and
then Mike Talbert, and then Doug Dixon, and then Doug Dixon. Yeah. So okay. Sorry to interrupt, but Mike, let it rip, man, because you can freewheel this better than probably anybody I know.
No, I want you guys' input too, but it's true. I've known Jim for a long time, and we were little beach rats growing up around Jax Beach, and going to Fletcher, and we had a great time. We had a good life. We had a good childhood.
Fletcher had open campus, which was a real plus, and the only high school at the beach. So that was.
And most people know, if you don't know why Fletcher had open campus, was because
we had to surf in the middle of the day.
The roof of the cafeteria caved in.
1974.
And they had to go to open campus. And so if you had lunch, 5th period, you had basically 55 minutes, and we were only 3 or 4 blocks from the beach. We would literally have our surfboards in the car, And when the bell rang for whatever period you had lunch, we would haul butt down the end of Seagate Road, surf for 30 minutes.
And come back with wet baggies and sit
and Mike Hughes lived across the street from Fletcher. He had a pool. We'd pull up in his yard, literally in the grass, jump out of the car, run in, jump in his pool, get out, put some dry shorts and shirt on, and go back across the street and finish the day of school, which was pretty cool, to surf.
And they still do that today. I think they still have open campus, which is kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
Because all the trouble you can get into for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever.
And of course, I'm going to kind of this will probably set up part of my story because in 8th grade I had Mr. Lanehart, Jackson Lanehart for math, and a lot of people.
Yeah, wonderful. If anybody knows Jackson, but Lanehart, shout out to him because he's been having some health problems, but one of the most favorite and beloved teachers at Fletcher ever.
we had split sessions when I was in 8th and 9th grade at Fletcher Junior High. So I started school at 6 a.m. And by second period, it was 7:30 or something, and the sun was coming up. And in Mr. Lanehart's class, I could look out the window and see the beach. And if there was surf, I'd walk in and I'd go straight to the window. And if the surf was good, I'd look over at Mr. Lanehart and go, "Man, I'm sorry." And he'd go, "No," and I'd take off and go surfing. I mean, so I'm admitting that I'd skip school if the surf was good in 8th grade. So that.
But he was so cool, he'd still pass you.
Oh, well,
not with an A or a B, but you still get out of his class because he didn't want you coming back.
Exactly.
And he surfed too, so
exactly. Yeah. And he got it. He's still around to this day, and it's so funny because whenever I see him, I say, "Hey, Mr. Lanehart, how you doing?" And he'll go, "Mike, you can call me Jackson now." And I go, "Okay, Mr. Lanehart, thanks." But it was growing up at the beach. We had a great life and great community, and surfing was my number one love, and I did it. I played baseball, but when practice started taking up surfing time, it was time to end baseball. And then Coach Witherspoon wanted me to run track, and I had to tell him, no, that would kill my surfing time. And then I think it was Miss Reese at Fletcher Senior, was the tennis coach. She saw me hit a tennis serve one day and came to me and wanted me to be on the tennis team. And I said, sorry, that would interfere with my surfing time. So that's how much I love surfing. I could have done, I could have been in a bunch of sports, but.
I thought skating was your big thing, though.
Well,
and tell them the story. Tell us the story that you were, or tell the viewers the story and listeners about how y'all started video recording all of this before anybody was. Skating didn't really take off around here until the early 70s.
Mid-70s,
and we all started skating in empty swimming pools and things like that. I mean,
the Lords of Dogtown, Tony Alva and all those guys.
Yes.
So you started looking at that, and Jackson had a big community as far as...
Jax was big.
I'm going to tell you about the Lords of Dogtown. If you guys know what Dogtown is, Tony Alva, Jay Adams, Bob Biniak, the whole crew, were, when you're in elementary school, your friends are limited to the neighborhood you live in because you're not old enough.
You can only go so far. You don't have a car yet,
right? And you're little, and your parents will restrict your access to geographic distance. So in Santa Monica, there were these 12 or 13 kids who they lived the surf life just the same as we did in Atlantic Beach. Our little neighborhood of Atlantic Beach, we ended up having 10 or 12 surfers who. We were like the best surfers on the East Coast because we were winning all these contests. And there was like 10 of us, and we were all, everywhere we went, Cocoa Beach, North Carolina, any contest out of town, we were the guys to beat. And so at that point, nobody knew about Dogtown or skating, but we were living this existence that was almost identical at opposite ends of the
coast.
country.
Yeah.
West Coast and East Coast, yeah.
And so one of our friends' parents got divorced, and he went, and his dad moved to Santa Monica in 75, and Jimmy goes out to Santa Monica, and he's standing in the yard or something, as the story goes. He doesn't know anybody. He's there for the summer. These two kids go by on skateboards, holding surfboards under their arm, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" They go, "Hey, we're going surfing, come on." And he gets his board, and runs down to the beach and paddles out with Jay Adams and Tony Alva, who were the two main dudes of Dogtown. Well, so this friendship started up, and then Jimmy came home after summer, told us all these stories, and to be honest, we didn't believe him, And then the next summer, he goes out and spends the summer with the Dogtowners. Comes home, tells us stories. We don't believe it.
Yeah, long before you had a cell phone that you could take pictures of them. I'm really with these guys.
Well, then skateboarding had boomed, And Surfer Magazine put out the first skateboarder magazine with Tony Alva on the cover. And so we get it in our surf shops. And here's this proof of what Jimmy had been telling us all along. And we're like, oh my God, he was telling the truth. Well, but the big point of that is it bonded a friendship between the Dogtowners,
the two coasts,
and what we called Rat Town. And the stories of us growing up were almost identical. So it was pretty cool. It gave us a connection to the most famous skate scene in the world.
Yeah.
And we were just like them.
And I've seen you skate. And for all you skaters out there, if you don't know who this guy is, he's pretty famous locally. This guy can skate.
Well,
as old as he is, he can still skate.
Well, thanks. I skate banks, but
but
my vert days are long over.
Yeah.
And
your body can't take those kind of impacts anymore.
No, man, my body barely.
How old are you?
59.
My cousin Steve Leggett, he was a big skater in Jacksonville back in the day. You know, he did a lot of stuff, and he surfs. And
he's probably younger than me, but
he is. He's 2 years older than me. He's probably 56, something like that.
Okay, that's pretty close. You know, but skateboarding was an extension of surfing.
Yeah.
Period. And so it was always about surfing, and so I wanted to go on the pro surf tour, and follow. My brother Mitch went out to Hawaii to surf, and I hoped to follow him when I got out of high school. But in my senior year of high school, skateboarding was so big, and I got sponsored by Z-Flex, which was the story about Dogtown is Dogtown and the Z-Boys is the documentary. They were the original Z-Boys. And the Z is for Zephyr Surf Shop, which was owned by Zephyr Surfboards, which was owned by Jeff Ho and Skip Ingram. And these kids were sponsored because they all had the surf background. They hang out at Venice Beach down there by the Zephyr Shop. And so it was the same with us. And so I got picked up by Z-Flex. And that was like, to me, the biggest honor in the world. To be a Z-Boy is, there's not many skaters that can say they're a Z-Boy. So
tell us, let's move forward a little bit. So Mike comes from a nice family. I know his family. He was raised properly, and Mike's gotten very popular in his youth with all of his skills and talents. And then what happened, Mike?
Well, I was as a surfer, I was a little stoner. Okay, I'm just gonna admit I was smoked a lot of pot and
kind of went hand in hand.
Yeah,
back in the day.
Yeah. And part of the fame we called ourselves the Rasta Rats because Bob Marley and the whole Rastafarian thing, they smoke pot religiously, and so we would smoke pot to raise our level of performance, and then after high school, listen, I got used to the money and I kept doing it, and I got busted, and I got charged with trafficking cocaine, which I started out with pot, and that's why I say.
So you were a local dealer.
Yep.
Down at Atlantic Beach, slinging weed, and then some cocaine, which was getting really popular back in those days.
79, 80,
late 70s, the disco era. Cocaine was like the new magic drug on the street.
Yep. So
pre crack.
Oh yeah,
powder
there
cocaine.
Was no such thing as crack then, and so I got arrested with 38 grams of cocaine.
So a lot back then.
Well, it was trafficking, and like 5 months prior to my arrest. Trafficking cocaine was like 500 pounds or some huge number, like a truckload. And the laws changed to make trafficking fall under 28 grams or more. And so I had 38 grams of coke, and I was with a guy who was selling it to somebody, and so I got charged with trafficking cocaine. And
what agency arrested you, by the way? Was it Atlantic Beach or was it Jacksonville Sheriff? So JSO Vice was watching you, narcotics. Even though you narcotics. Yeah, not Vice, narcotics. That'd be narcotics. But you lived in Atlantic Beach. So to give the viewers a perspective, his dealing was so big, he was on the radar of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, all of Duval County, instead of just one small local agency of the city that he lived in. So he was a high profile guy to them.
Yep. So I got arrested. I got charged. We were out on bond for a year fighting it, and I'm not going to go into the process of going to trial or pleading out, but eventually I pled out and got 4 years, and I went to the Florida Department of Corrections for 4 years, and while I was there,
which one did you go to?
I went to ACI East Unit, which is out in the Panhandle, just under the Alabama, Georgia, Florida border.
Okay, so you weren't here.
But these were state charges, not federal charges.
Right.
State.
These
Okay,
were
but
state
you didn't end up at Rayford or somewhere off 301 in one of those correction centers or
No,
anything?
but to get where you go through Lake Butler.
Yeah.
Or Lake Butler,
and,
yeah.
And even this was 1980. It was 83 I got busted. It was 84 that I got sentenced. So even then, overcrowding was so unbelievable.
So here you were this good-looking kid. You had a lot going on, and all of a sudden, you're in state prison, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was heavy.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah.
And you're young.
Yeah, and I was a skinny little.
And there's some hard
surfer, yeah,
hardcore people in there.
yeah, yeah. And so it's really not like Oz. If you're a fan of Oz, it's actually, of course, it sucks. Okay, but if you get in a routine, prison is a lot different than jail. When you're in a county jail, and a lot of people don't really realize this, when you're in a county jail, you're confined to basically one room. Mm-hmm. You might go outside, or they might have a rec area outside your unit.
And you're getting out within a couple of days or whatever, so you're just sitting there biding your time going, I'm getting out tomorrow, or I'm getting out in 3 weeks or whatever. So,
or if a judge sentences you to a year in the county jail or
Right.
1129, you're going to be there for that long, but you see an end to it.
Right.
But when you go to prison, the inmates, there's 2,000 roughly inmates per prison, and they work and run the show. I mean, they run the
you got to
facility.
change your way of life.
Well, so you get up in the morning and you leave to go to breakfast, as opposed to the county jail where they bring the breakfast to you and you stay in that room. You get up and you might walk 200 or 300 or 400 yards to the cafeteria where you eat breakfast, and then you go back to your unit. They count you and you go to work. And I mean, they have education there, so they have teachers' aides. They have inmates that go to school to get. If you don't have a GED, that's the first thing the state of Florida requires is you go to school if you're incarcerated and you get your GED. And so they have guys like me who had a GED. I might be a teacher's aide, or I might work in the mechanic shop, or I might work in the kitchen or the laundry. You hear all these things, but you get up and move around all day long. You're not confined to that room. So life gets a little better when you go to the penitentiary than it is in the county jail. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying life's good when you're in the penitentiary, because it's not. But it's not as bad as a lot of people think. And that's one of the books I'm writing. It's called...
No, it's horrible, Mike.
Yeah.
I've never been there, but it's horrible. So let's
My
fast.
cousin did 19 years. I'd like to have him on at some point, but
that's your life is pretty much goes in about 4 20-year segments, and then you're 80 years old. So if you spend 19 years in prison, and you're already 20 years old, that's half your life's gone.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So let's fast forward a little bit. So you get out.
You did 4?
You did 4. So you did the full 4, get out on parole. Are you on parole?
No, it's
There's
called
no parole.
EOS,
There's
end
no
of sentence. I finished it.
100%. Okay.
Yep. And I was done. And I came home, and that's when, going back to the sports thing, that's when we started doing some television production on surfing and skateboarding. And that led to the Radical Side TV show that my brother produced for 13 years. And so I covered the skateboarding side of it for the most part, and Mitch did all the surfing. And we had this cool show for 13 years. And it put me in a position where, even though, I had broke the law and been to prison, I came out, I could look you in the eye and know I paid my dues and move on with my life. Okay? And I had some great opportunities. Well, one of the guys I met in prison shows up knocking on my door one day, and he was doing bank fraud. And in prison, we had talked about golf. And this guy said he was a good golfer. And, everybody lies in prison, so I didn't believe a word he said.
So he's like, let's go play golf.
So he shows up.
So I could talk to you about some bank fraud.
He shows up at my door
We could do some bank fraud.
with a big smile on his face. And he goes, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. And he was talking about going to play golf. Well, and we went out and played golf, and he was a scratch handicapper. And it really surprised me. And he had this knot of money, a roll of thousands of dollars in his pocket. And he said, hey, this is what I'm doing, man. Come join me. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going back. And at that time, I had taken a job with the PGA Tour at PGA Tour Productions. And I started out there just logging videotapes of television broadcasts over the course from the first broadcast. Well, so my friend leaves, and he shows up another couple months later. And he's got all this money, and he says, man, you should come out on the road with me, And I'm like, yeah, there's no way. But we played a lot of golf on him, and And a few months later, he says, Mike, with all the connections you got, we could play every course the tour stops at. And I went, really? and so I have an addictive nature, okay? And I was addicted to golf at the time. I played, my record's 144 days straight. I played golf every day for 144 days.
Good Lord.
And,
Wow.
and I played 101 holes in one day. I mean, I just love golf. I just would go play. And so I finally succumbed and went out on the road with this guy. And he would forge checks, and I would cash them.
Back in the day when it was easy to get away with that.
Yeah.
Because electronically they couldn't keep up with it fast enough, and you'd move on.
Right. And he was an fake ID.
So you're always
master.
you're always ahead of them figuring it out.
Yeah.
Right.
And listen, and so and again, this is one of the things where you said on social media the other day, Jim, that there are no victimless crimes. You made that comment, and I say that
sometimes the person committing the crime is their own victim.
Yeah, and I say that all the time now because at the time, we're forging checks and cashing them, and the FDIC repays the bank.
Stolen checks or are they counterfeit checks?
Counterfeit checks.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes
some stolen checks.
Yeah,
some stolen checks.
Sometimes the victims are corporations and not just people. People think of you say victim, they think of people, but I mean businesses and even the U.S. government.
Yeah, whether I want to justify it in my mind or not, I don't know. Probably I was just trying to justify it, but I said it's a victimless crime. And of course, later, somebody broke into my car and stole my Dallas Cowboys jacket.
You felt like a victim.
I felt so violated. It was unbelievable. And it made me, that's the point where I went, what an idiot am I to go out and violate these people, because having that turned on me, it was just a $100 jacket. Man, it hurt bad. And so, and so we got busted for that. And I went back.
For how long?
5 years. And so.
How old were you then?
I think I was about 30, and that was in Tennessee. I went to prison in Tennessee, and the book I wrote called "Prison Ain't So Bad, But Getting Arrested Sucks" is about the concept that when I was in prison in Tennessee, I was in a 2-man cell. I had my own key to the door. I had
federal.
This was state.
Oh, state.
This was state. I had my own TV, 13-inch color TV, had 44 channels of cable that we paid for. You could buy drinks, soda pops off the commissary. And so the aluminum cans, we got 2,000 inmates.
You're making this sound too good again, though.
Okay. But
making prison sound too good.
This is the point I'm making is in that system, I could bet on sports. I could watch TV. They would allow you to have a small boom box as long as it was no wider than 3 feet. And so some of the guys had these big old boom boxes, which, to me is just overkill. In prisons, there's every drug you can get on the street. You can get in prison. And so I worked in a greenhouse, and I grew vegetables, and I could trade vegetables for marijuana. So I could smoke pot. I could bet on sports. I could watch TV. I could listen to music. And I told you this, if somebody snatched my mother out of her car in traffic and threw her down and hurt her and carjacked her, I would not want that person to have the punishment. I would want to be much harsher, okay? Or if you kill somebody, there were people that killed people in the prisons I was at. Typically medium security is where I went, but it wasn't hard enough, okay? And I'm just going to be honest about it.
For you, it wasn't hard enough. For me,
okay,
just the fact that I'm a risk taker. You're a risk taker. We're all probably to different levels risk takers, but I'm not willing to risk my freedom. You may go in there, okay, life's not so bad. I got food, I got weed, I got whatever that makes me happy. But in my mind, to think I'm locked up and my freedom's limited and I can't go and do whatever I'm used to doing, it's that kind of thing that will always keep you on the straight and narrow.
I got you.
And not rolling those dice going, I'm going to take a chance, or I may sell some drugs here, because in my mind, I get caught. It's not worth it. I don't care how much money I can make. That's me, though.
Well, we're missing a piece, though. So a lot of this, you've gone twice now, but from that start to this finish, you're still a drug user this entire time. So you still have that addictive personality.
Yep.
And you're still using drugs, which lends itself to create these other doorways to crime. So
And for example, when I got out, the first time when I got out, I was drug free for like 6 years, and whatever made me go back to doing cocaine again, I don't know.
Did you go to AA or NA to remain drug free, or is this something you just did self-will?
Self-will.
Okay, good.
I mean, I did go to NA for a while.
Okay.
And then your life gets busy, then you clean up, and then things start happening. And I know people who've been to AA for 25 years, and like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times a week they go into 25 years. So so I get busy and I quit going to meetings, and I might relapse sometime, but so I think the meetings do help. I think the guys who really have been clean for 25 years, who go to 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 meetings a week.
Did you go back after that though? Did you get arrested again?
Yep.
You did. Let's tell us about that.
Well,
hey, this show is only like 5 hours long, so we need to fast forward a little bit. Yeah, just kidding. No, I know you got a long story to tell, big story to tell, and I want to hear about all the criminal activity in the prison and stuff, and then tell us what you did after that. And like Larry said, redemption, and we want to hear part of that story and where you are today.
Yep. Well, good, because so I went back. I did some counterfeiting, and
you just make that sound pretty casual. So you're counterfeiting U.S. currency.
$20 bill.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And
is this when the copiers came out that could do it? Okay, so like late 90s, 90 something,
late 80s.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The first copier that could really
3M
that could copy them. We scanned the $20 bill. The scanners at the time weren't the way they are now. It was a little handheld scanner that you drug across the document, and it put a picture in the computer. And we used a program called Corel Draw. And because when you scan that, pixels are squares, so what you see digital are little squares. And so we had to go and clean that up and worked on it for about 6 months on both sides.
Yeah.
And then we printed them.
So this wasn't just some spontaneous, hey, let's go run some bills on the copier and go party tonight.
No.
You put a big plan into this.
Yeah. And then we watched a PBS broadcast on how the Secret Service catches counterfeiters. So, which really surprised me that they made, because it told us exactly what not to do. And so, for example, when a counterfeit bill turns up in currency, the Secret Service focuses the most on the area where it turns up first. And so we drove through Atlanta and tossed $20,000 out the window of the car at 2:00 in the morning in a black neighborhood, and so the Secret Service would focus there while we were zipped across the country and converted these things. And so, the Secret Service had a file on me, and it was pretty crazy. And I didn't actually get charged with it. It violated me on the checks, but the guy that I was with, he's the guy that did the time for it. So they had enough on me on these checks charges that they went, you know what, they're just going to run it concurrent. It costs the government too much money to prosecute me when I'm still going to get punished, and so that's what happened. And then,
so did you go to prison for the counterfeiting? They send you to the federal prison this time, or are they just
they dropped?
So you're saying they dropped it? Okay, gotcha. Right.
Yeah. And then there was some of the things we did check related included stealing mail out of boxes at the post office, and we had a device that went into the mailbox, and people throw their mail in, and we get it. We take a picture of their check and put it back in the box, and then we would counterfeit. We would print checks on the computer and go deposit them and ask for cash back. Okay.
Pretty clever stuff, man.
Well, it's that, and as I told you yesterday, that arrest made international news. And so the day after I got arrested, eventually I talked to my brother, and he said, yeah, I knew you got arrested because I got a call from London. I got a call from Australia saying, oh, man, we're sorry about Mike. We see you got busted again. And and at that point, that's when I went, I was 40. and I was wasting my life away. And I'll tell you, while I was in the Duval County Jail, right prior to this, there was a corrections officer, and his name was Officer Zach. And he was about 5'4", pretty diminutive, good-looking guy. And I'm looking at him through the glass. I'm saying to myself, what's this guy doing being a corrections officer? Because nobody would be scared of this guy. Nobody would really respect him because he's too small. And as I was walking away thinking this, I thought, even kids wouldn't be scared of this guy. And all of a sudden, something clicked in my brain. And I went, that's the guy that is a perfect spokesman to talk to kids about safety issues, because kids would instinctively trust this guy. He's a police officer. He's got the look that inspires confidence. And at that point, even though I was locked up, I started writing scripts and what I was going to call the Officer Zach Foundation. And so I did the next few years locked up in federal prison, and I wrote like 15 scripts. I devised a plan, and when I got out, what I wanted to do was change my legacy. And you can't really change your past, but you can do something for the good of mankind. And that's what I should have been doing all the time. I was just easily influenced. And again, I don't know if what I'm saying sounds like I'm justifying, because I did some stuff that I wish I had never done. But I saw an opportunity to change it. And I started what's called the Officer Jack Foundation. And I have a cop character and a fireman character, Fireman Jake and Officer Jack. And I wrote a bunch of 30-second scripts for PSAs, and I produced a bunch of them and took them down to the network affiliates, and they loved them. And it's like stranger danger, fire safety, recycling, bullying, and Joey Romer. You know Joey, right?
Oh yeah. I knew of the program you're talking about through Joey.
Yeah. So Joey Romer was a career St. Johns County Sheriff's deputy.
Yeah.
And he's a super cool guy.
Joey and I hung out like every day in high school, long before we were in the same homeroom because our last names were close, long before he ever even thought about becoming
a cop,
a deputy.
Yeah.
And I could do a whole show on me and Joey Romer.
Yeah, well.
Joey, I hope you need to watch this sometime, and we'll talk about that.
I went through a couple candidates, but finally it came down to Joey. And Joey was all about doing it.
He's a great guy.
And so we did this thing called the Officer Jack Foundation, and we made these PSAs, but we also went into elementary schools to talk to kids. And Joey, he had some experience, talking to kids about safety issues. Well, he had this thing, it was a fake thumb. And when you put it over your thumb, and when you push on it, the little red light lights up. So Officer Jack had one, and Fireman Jake had one, and Joey had the red laser pen that he would, put the little red dot around. And the kids, he talked to the kids, and they'd be watching the red dot, and he'd flick it up, and he'd go. And it looked like he caught it. So Joey had this way of getting their attention. And once they saw him catch that little red dot, and they threw it over to Fireman Jake catches it. And I've got some video and pictures I hope y'all will use for this. But the kids are now, first and second graders, they're listening to every word these guys say. They are wrapped eye to eye. And then Joey starts talking about stranger danger.
Yeah. Hard to capture kids' attention too for more than
hard to capture
5 seconds.
He was so good. And so we did this for a while. And my spots are on Channel 12 and Channel 4, Channel 30, Channel 47, primarily on Saturday mornings because they're for kids. So they're on the cartoon hours. And then someone at the DEA saw it, and the DEA has a branch called HIDA, which is high intensity drug traffic areas. And so someone from the DEA called me and said, we want to talk to you. We have money to spend, and we have money for drug treatment. We have money for drug prevention. And we want you to focus on drug prevention, if you will. And we want to sit down and have a talk with you. And I said, well, this is Mike Kaufmann.
You called?
I have they said, look, we know all about you. We've known all about you for a long time. And you're the guy we want to help, which I said, right on, let's do it. So we met, and then that expanded the Officer Jack program into a program that we targeted middle school kids. And
prime age right there.
And talked about peer pressure. And so we had these good-looking kids that were popular. And they said, look, we deal with a lot of pressure.
Bunch of little old Mike Kaufmans.
And peer pressure is probably the biggest one that we deal with, but we still don't go to drugs to help us deal with it. And, you know, and somebody popular at your school who's saying that on TV over and over again, we feel it had an effect. We hope we help some people. And so I still do the child safety advocacy, the Officer Jack Foundation. The donations quit coming in, and it takes money to run it. You know, I paint houses and put my own money into it sometimes. But the whole program is now stopped. It wouldn't be, I would love to do it again, but it's really good. And then I forgot to put this. When I was a kid, we had Officer Friendly. Let's say Officer Safety. We had Officer Friendly. And he talked about the same things we talk about. Right. And so that's what I thought. You know, that's a perfect replacement for Officer Friendly because there's nobody out there doing that. And so I mean.
So have you found your good place? I mean, if you've done all those things, you've done those productions, you've written some books, and the addiction, you've got that under control.
Yep. You
still having issues? I mean, did you go get help? Did you get some long-term help?
I did. Yeah. I did. And I saw a psychiatrist for a year or a psychologist for a year. And I've been to meetings. And with my record, if I caught one more charge, I would never get out. Okay. And y'all are going to have Angela Corey on here. And she probably, I don't know if she doesn't know me, but Pam Bondi sure does. And Pam Bondi's one that really had it in for me. And so I know if I do anything.
You got Pam Bondi on your butt. You're in big trouble, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. But listen, you know, the truth, the bottom line is, regardless of what I jeopardize my freedom again, it's not even a factor in my mind. What's a factor in my mind is that's not how you're supposed to live. Right. You don't victimize people. You help people. And in America, that's the greatest part of living in America is that we're supposed to be all Americans and we're supposed to help everybody. Then, of course, we know there's haters out there and there's so much negativity in the world.
And you're a victim of your addiction on top of that. So.
Well, that's true. And Judge Henry Davis saw that. And he also helped me, sent me to Phoenix House, which is what my book's about. And which you can get on Amazon.
Well, hey, no, I was going to say, give yourself a plug because you've got another book, the one about the light bulb.
So let me tell you about the book. Okay?
So take a few minutes to plug yourself.
I went through rehab, and I went to the Phoenix House, and it's a big corporate rehab. And big corporate rehabs really are less about helping people than they are about the money. And I hate to say that, but it's true. So I wrote a book about it, which is a tongue-in-cheek, making a mockery of the process because it was, you know, in my opinion, it wasn't that designed to help people. And so the book's funny and it's entertaining, but it really has no value in the world because it doesn't help anybody. It just points out the hypocrisy of the corporate heads that run this thing. So I haven't really promoted the book very much because I don't want that to be, you know, me making a mockery of the process. So my next book is called Living with the Consequences. And that's a really heartfelt look at not just me. You know, I've met people along my path that have had other problems, sex addiction, gambling addictions.
It's all forms.
Alcohol, drugs.
Alcohol.
Addiction comes in all forms.
And the thing is,
copy that one.
It's whatever you're
done with that one. You've got that one out there.
I'm about halfway done. And let me.
That could be a self-help book. I mean, that's a book you need to get out there.
It is. And the reason why, because, you know, heroin addiction is opiates. It's rampant. And my friends' kids are dying. And I've got the ability and the knowledge to help people. And so living with the consequences will help a lot of people. And if you're a grandparent and you grew up in a time where drug addiction wasn't, you know, rampant and you don't really get it, and your grandson is who you love is a heroin addict and he's stealing from you and he's stealing from his parents and he's doing all these bad things and you want to help him, but the more you help him, the more you enable him, and then you've got an option to stop helping him, or you can cut him off altogether. There's options that everybody has. And if you cut your grandson off because you love him or your nephew or whoever it may be, and you feel guilty about it, you don't have to feel guilty. There's information out there that, and like this book will show you why living with the consequences, it relies on the person who's got the problem to deal with it. And if you're somebody in the family
It's an enabler.
And you stop and you go, oh my gosh, I want to help him. Well, you don't need to feel guilty. You need to make your decision and live with it. But the more information you have on how you can help him better is in this book.
Good.
And so
I got a family member with a kid that'll steal and take a car.
Had one too, and I had a family member that continually, it wasn't that sort of thing, but continually enabled the other family member. And it was like, all you're doing is allowing them to continue this bad behavior. And they thought, no, I'm helping them. No, they need money
Trying to
right
keep them
now.
out of trouble, or they think they're helping them.
Yep. And so you need to understand that even if you cut them off, that you're
It's the best thing you can do.
if you're doing it for the right reason and in the right way, okay, and you don't need to feel guilty. So my whole approach to this is that now I've got a book that helps people, and that's something that I can live with.
Well, we've done 2 shows of people that have a story similar to yours where they are now using what happened to them in their life to help people going forward. So it's perfect and you're still young, perfect opportunity for you
I'm
to take
not that
all this
young.
stuff that's you've done or has happened to you and keep other people, because like I said, you came from a nice family. You're a great guy in school. You're a great guy now, but keep them from making those same mistakes and wasting 5 years of my life here, another 5 years here. And, sitting in prison.
Let's get the book done.
Yeah.
And
And
come back.
let's get back on.
Okay, and so here's what I'm planning to do is finish this book, get it published, and because I was a pro skateboarder in Atlantic Beach, Florida, and Z-Flex and the Dogtown boys are in Santa Monica, California, which are at the opposite ends of I-10. I'm going to skateboard from Atlantic Beach, Florida, to Santa Monica, California.
You told me this.
And promote the book and stop and do, public speaking appearances, book signings, television and print interviews, stop at skate parks. But
we'll have to build segments in for this.
yeah, well,
That's a great idea. Yeah.
and tell people across,
we'll support you on that.
across my path that you don't have to. If you're going down the wrong road, you've got options.
We'll do call-in interviews and talk to him at certain.
That would be super
Great
cool.
idea.
That would
Love
be cool.
Love it. Yeah,
Because
we need to capture
certain landmarks or certain milestones.
when I was living with Melody, there was a kid in the neighborhood who was a young surfer skater. He stole his granddad's car and wrecked it, and then
I think everybody did that.
hauled butt home and
At
hid the
least
car
once.
and hid in his room for like 3 days. They thought he ran away. And when they found him, they asked me, hey, would you talk to this guy? Would you talk to our grandson? Because we wanted to get him some help. Well, so I talked to him and I said, look, you love skateboarding. And Tony Hawk is like your hero. And Tony Hawk is not a druggie. Tony Hawk is super successful and he's not a head. He's not a stoner, And I go, you should aspire to be more like Tony Hawk. If that's your hero, I go, and you love surfing. And Kelly Slater is an 11-time world champion and he's not a little drug head. If you love surfing so much, why can't you emulate your heroes? And
The
when
lifestyle they're living, the clean, healthy,
right, and
straight
what?
edge kind of
The
lifestyle.
kid cleaned up his act, and he's now got
He's a role model, huge role model.
yeah, he's got his hair. He wears a tie to work. He's got a job. He's doing great. And you know what? I helped one person that I know of.
Well, you've probably helped more than you
God
know.
sees that. God sees that.
With the Officer Jack and all those programs you're talking about, you probably helped a ton of kids you'll never know that you helped.
I know.
If you helped one kid, but he nailed it right there. He said God sees that, and that's your true redemption. We're not going to make this a religious show, but
that's my calling.
He nailed it right there. That gives me chills. That should be your passion right there.
That's what I want to do, man. Is I want to take my experiences now.
Let's get that book done. Let's do this trip. Let's
help people.
Let's get these interviews and
and do this again.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap. You got anything you want to say before we close this up?
Have you on again? I want progress on the book.
No, I want to say thanks. I want to thank you for your service, 28 years. And listen, I'll throw this in there too.
True leader right here.
Every time I've been arrested, I've never had a bad experience with a police officer. I respect police officers. I'm friends with half the cops that arrested me, and the federal mail inspector who arrested me, Mark Shaw, he wrote me letters while I was in prison. And then when I got out and started the Officer Jack Foundation, I called him and told him about it, and he sent me suggestions. So first responders, man, you guys' job you do an amazing job.
Thank you,
And in the climate that we live in today, if anybody's listening to me, man, respect your first responders. Just because
don't listen to false narratives.
Right,
Yeah,
man. And
they're the ones that are going to save your life or a family member's life.
Policemen give you a direction. No one ever has trouble if they just do what the police ask.
If they do what they're supposed to do.
I still say that Chris Rock video needs to be a public service announcement. If people know what I'm talking about, it's pretty. It's,
how to not get your ass beat by the police.
It's funny, but man, it couldn't have been more true. So,
and I want to thank you guys for letting me be on the show. It's
let's do it again.
It's an honor.
Now you got something to do. Let's get some more chapters done.
I do, and I'm working on that. And it's really cool.
That's good.
And
we want to thank you for coming, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir. Hey, that's a wrap on episode 5 of RealJax with Jim and Larry. Stay tuned for our next episode. Episode 6, we're going to have career police officer Steven Srozinski. If you don't know Steve, then you don't know the whole story. One thing about Steve is he's probably the most prolific collector of police badges and memorabilia that relates to the Jacksonville Police Department, the Duval County Road Patrol. These are all pre-consolidation agencies, and then the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. He's got an amazing collection. It should be on display somewhere. But there's a whole nother twist about his career that if you don't know about it, you need to watch this episode. So
Look forward to it.
we look forward to seeing you again, and we'll see you next time.